Look, Maria, I just can't do this anymore. It's over between us. I'm sorry.
Maria had been in a long relationship with a man she truly loved. For years, they lived together, shared the same apartment, and talked about building a future. But as time went on, things changed, not just in Maria's body, but in his attitude. Instead of supporting her through life's ups and downs, he became colder. He stopped showing affection. He made comments about her appearance. He compared her to who she used to be. And slowly, Maria began to feel like a stranger inside her own home. One morning, without warning, he told her he no longer loved her. He said he didn't feel attracted anymore and that he wanted something different. There were no tears from him, no hesitation, no discussion, just a decision. Maria didn't fight. She didn't beg. She quietly packed her things, placed her clothes and a few personal items into a suitcase, and left a short note on the kitchen table. The note said, "I don't want to lose myself trying to stay with someone who doesn't value me." She walked out of the apartment building with no idea where she would go next. She had no plan, no family nearby, and no close friends to call. Hours later, she found herself sitting on a quiet sidewalk, staring up at the sky, wondering how her life had fallen apart so quickly. She felt small, she felt invisible, and she didn't know who she was anymore without him. But in that moment of uncertainty, life placed something unexpected at her feet. A crumpled piece of paper lying near the curb. It was dirty, wrinkled, and unimportant at first glance. She didn't know why, but something told her to pick it up. And that simple decision would change everything in part 2. Maria walked through the city with her suitcase in one hand and that crumpled piece of paper in the other. She didn't know why she kept it. Maybe she just needed something to hold on to. Maybe she was trying to distract herself. Or maybe it was just fate. By morning, the streets were quieter. She found a small convenience store at the corner of a busy intersection and decided to go inside. She was tired, hungry, and still unsure of what would happen next. While looking for something to drink, she noticed a small sign behind the counter that said, "Lottery tickets checked here." She looked down at the crumpled paper in her hand and slowly walked up to the register. The cashier was an older man with glasses and a calm voice. Maria handed him the ticket without saying much. He scanned it casually, like it was nothing important. But then he paused. He looked at the screen, then at the ticket, then at Maria. For a moment, Maria thought she had caused a problem. She worried he might accuse her of something or tell her the ticket was invalid. Instead, he simply asked her to wait a moment. He scanned it again. He checked a second monitor, and then he looked up at her with wide eyes. "Ma'am, I don't know how to tell you this, but you just won one of the top prizes." Maria stared at him, confused. He showed her the screen. The prize amount was in the millions. Everything around her seemed to freeze. The noise of the street, the hum of the refrigerators, the beep of other customers checking out, everything disappeared for a moment. She felt dizzy, like the world had tilted in a direction she didn't understand. She didn't scream, she didn't jump, she didn't dance. She just stood there in shock, trying to breathe. For so long, Maria had been told she wasn't enough. For so long, she had carried the words and judgment of other people on her shoulders. But now, in a moment that felt impossible, life quietly handed her something extraordinary. She left the store with shaking hands and sat on a bench outside. For the first time in months, maybe even years, she smiled, just a little. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't post it online. She didn't call her ex. She kept it to herself. Because some blessings are meant to be processed in silence. And what she did next changed more than just her bank account. But that part comes in part 3. Maria didn't run out celebrating. She didn't rush to buy anything expensive. She just sat quietly with the winning ticket in her hand, trying to understand what had just happened. It didn't feel real. Just hours ago, she had nowhere to sleep, no one to call, and no idea where she belonged. Now she was holding a piece of paper that could rewrite her entire life. After verifying the prize with the lottery office, the payments were processed legally and securely. For the first time in a long time, Maria felt like the future wasn't something to fear anymore. She didn't start by buying cars or jewelry. She started with basics. She booked a small motel room for a few nights. She bought herself a warm meal. She sat on the edge of a freshly made bed and realized she didn't have to worry for the first time in years. Then she did something most people wouldn't expect. She called her mother. They hadn't seen each other in a long time. Life, distance, work, and relationships had created a gap between them. But Maria wanted to change that. When her mother answered the phone, Maria didn't mention the money. She just asked if she could come home. A week later, Maria arrived at her mother's doorstep with her suitcase. Her mother opened the door, stunned, then hugged her tightly. For the first time since leaving that apartment, Maria cried, not from sadness, but from relief. Over the next few months, Maria focused on healing. She cooked meals for her mother. She slept without anxiety. She started reading again. She met with a financial advisor who helped her manage her winnings responsibly. When tax day came, she paid everything properly. When house hunting began, she didn't choose something flashy. She chose a cozy place where her mother could have her own garden and where Maria could build a fresh start. She signed the papers, she held the keys, and just like that, Maria went from sleeping on sidewalks to opening the door to her very own home. Inside that house, something changed in her. She began to take care of herself again, not for anyone else's approval, but because she finally valued her own life. She bought real food. She exercised slowly at her own pace. She tried clothes that made her feel confident. And for the first time in years, she looked in a mirror and didn't hear anyone else's voice, only her own. Maria didn't post about her success. She didn't try to make anyone jealous. She didn't chase validation or revenge. She just lived, quietly, peacefully, and with dignity. But life, as always, wasn't done surprising her yet. That part comes in part 4. Months passed, and Maria settled into her new home. It wasn't a mansion or a luxury penthouse. It was a warm, quiet, modest house with a small garden in the back, exactly what she and her mother needed. Maria began rebuilding her life in ways that had nothing to do with money. She started waking up early, opening the windows and letting sunlight fill the rooms. She cooked breakfast with her mom, watered plants, and took slow walks around the neighborhood. She didn't rush anything. She didn't feel pressured to impress anyone. She also began taking care of herself in small but meaningful ways, not because she wanted to change for someone else, but because she finally understood that she deserved care. She joined a local gym, not to chase a certain body, but to move and feel stronger. She bought comfortable clothing that made her feel confident, and she filled her closet with colors she once avoided because someone else didn't like them. For the first time in her adult life, she looked in the mirror and spoke kindly to herself. She also made friends, real friends. Neighbors would wave from across the street. A woman down the block invited her to gardening club meetings. Another helped her learn new recipes. The world didn't feel as dark or lonely anymore. It felt open. One afternoon, while sitting on her back porch with a cup of tea, Maria grabbed a notebook and began writing. She wrote about the relationship, the silence, the doubts, the moments she lost herself, and all the things she wished she could tell her younger self. It wasn't for a book, it wasn't for the internet, it was just for her. She filled pages with thoughts she never said out loud, pages full of pain and pages full of healing. But the most important thing she realized during those months was this: she didn't need anyone's validation to feel whole. Not her ex, not the world, not social media. She had built a life that made sense to her. Her smile wasn't forced anymore. It was real. As time moved forward, Maria almost forgot about the man who once made her feel small. She didn't stalk his profile. She didn't wait for him to call. She didn't care what he thought. Because happiness wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about proving to herself that she deserved better and choosing it every day. Maria had no idea that life was about to circle back in a way she never expected. And that story begins in part 5. Months turned into a full year, and Maria's life continued quietly. She had created a new world for herself, one that didn't revolve around anyone's approval. She wasn't searching for validation or trying to impress anyone. She had peace, independence, and stability. Then one afternoon, while Maria was sorting books in her living room, her phone buzzed. She didn't recognize the number at first. When she opened the message, her heart paused for just a moment. It was him. The message was short. It said, "Hey, can we talk?" Maria stared at the screen, not with sadness or anger, but with a quiet kind of clarity. She wasn't that same girl anymore, the girl who waited for affection, for attention, or for someone to choose her. She didn't respond immediately. She closed her phone and went back to her day. Hours later, curiosity led her to check his social media. His posts told a familiar story. Breakups, new apartments, old hobbies, pictures with friends. Yet there was something missing. It was the look in his eyes. They were tired, unfocused, searching for something. Maria didn't feel satisfaction or revenge. She felt empathy, because life had already taught her that hurting people doesn't heal you. Healing comes from choosing yourself. The next day, she wrote back, not with insults, not with bitterness, but with honesty. She said, "I'm doing well. I hope you are too, but I'm not interested in going backwards. Take care." She sent the message. No long arguments, no explanations, no what-ifs. On the other side of that conversation, there was silence, and that silence said everything. Her ex replied once more, hours later. His message read, "I'm sorry. I didn't appreciate you when I should have." Maria read it and smiled, not because she wanted him now, but because she no longer needed him to say those words to feel whole. She had already closed that chapter long before he realized what he lost. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Maria went outside, sat by her backyard garden, and watched the sunlight dance across the leaves. Her mother joined her with 2 cups of tea, and they talked about weekend plans and recipes they wanted to try. There was no dramatic ending, no revenge scene, no public humiliation, just a quiet, powerful truth. Sometimes the best revenge is a life lived with peace. Maria wasn't defined by a breakup. She wasn't defined by a number on a scale. She wasn't defined by what someone else could or couldn't love. She was defined by how she rebuilt herself. She found value in her own reflection. She became her own support system. She learned to give love without losing herself in the process. And that was worth more than any apology, any closure text, or any lottery win. Because real closure doesn't come from someone else saying, "I'm sorry." It comes from waking up one morning, looking around at your life, and realizing you turned the page, and you didn't even realize it. That's where Maria's story ends. And if there's one lesson to take away, it's this: never forget your value, and never let anyone convince you that you need their approval to shine.